Um, Thank you for coming on the show, Hassan Barnes Esquire. Um, the Esquire part. What does that mean? I've heard that tons of times, but I don't know what that is.
So typically, Esquire. Good afternoon to your audience. My name is Hassan Barnes. I'm an attorney with a practice, general practice in Maryland. Esquire typically references a person who's an attorney. So when you hear someone says doctor or dr, is
Mm-hmm.
for a doctor. Esquire is typically for an attorney.
Okay.
Mm,
And
okay.
what made you want to become a lawyer?
Ah, good story. So I was a young person. I'm from Baltimore. I'm born and raised. If you may know, Baltimore is a fairly urban city.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in Baltimore. As I was younger, I did all kind of stuff. I was in programs to go to the fire department. I was in had jobs. I was working in the inner city of Baltimore doing work, helping people who have limited means get access to more means. Go to college, get jobs, get GEDs. But that kind of work don't pay. I mean, it's great work. I loved it, but it didn't pay very well. So I had a choice whether I would go to law school or get an MBA, and I weighed the two. I was interested in business, law, not so much, but I weighed the two. And when I did the weigh-in, in my mind, the law route had more options. You could do
Mm-hmm.
business and law with a law degree, and
Mm-hmm.
politics,
Yeah.
and all kind of things. Where with a business degree, you're pretty much stuck in business.
Interesting.
Gotcha. Okay. Just 1 second. We have our friend Paco came and he has a question to ask you.
Okay.
If that's fine. Yes. Um.
Limited edition visit from
Yes.
Paco.
Um. Perfect. So thanks very much, Paco, for joining us on the
Hello, how are
program.
you guys? First
Yes.
off,
Thank
question.
you for
Paco,
coming
how are
on.
you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Well, well.
Yeah.
So,
I
Paco,
just got to the one. So,
your question.
uh, my question: Are you a divorce lawyer?
We do so. I'm a general practitioner. We do quite a bit of divorce. I first
Okay.
started my practice. We did exclusively divorce and with family law. So it could be divorce, custody, child support, child abuse, those cases. But now we do more than that. But I can help you. What's your question?
No, I'm just the same because my friend wanted a divorce lawyer, and now he got a divorce, and I'm just saying, like, oh, I don't know someone, but now I know someone. So yeah.
Family law is very popular. I mean, if you go to court any given day, it's criminal or family.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have situations in this country where people are separated. If you have children, it requires the court to get involved for access, for visitation, financial support. So, family law is very, very popular and very common.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Do you want to follow up on that, Paco? What's interesting to you about divorce?
Nothing's interesting. Unfortunately, it doesn't need to, like it needs to happen, but it doesn't need to happen. Unfortunately, it happens a lot, especially in the
Paco's right.
state.
Paco's right. A divorce is horrible, and typically I see clients at their worst time in their lives when you're separating from your wife or your husband, and you try and find new schools for the kids and somewhere to live, and financially you go from having two incomes in one household to having income in one household. It's a change in your life. So divorce is always a bad thing. I mean, one of the things we do when we get clients, and our first question is, can you guys go to counseling? Can you work it out? Is there a chance that you guys can reconcile? Whether for you
Yeah.
individually, whether for the family, I believe it's easier to handle things as a family unit than not. But more often than not, there's no way to work it out. We've had cases where people have gone through the process for divorce, and right before trial, they decided, you know what, we don't want to get divorced. We'll stay together. It's hard.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard.
I already know.
it's because they see the process of what it's like, and so they're like, "Oh, we'd rather stay together than go through that hurdle." Yeah.
A lot of times they see the numbers, the financial side.
Oh.
That could be an incentive. It's a real thing. We live in a world where it costs money to live, and when you go from having two incomes to one, that could be a huge change in how you live your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um.
true.
What advice do you give people going through a divorce? Do you ever try? I know you're like a mediator. You ever try to like make them fall back in love together, or what's your
No, I
approach?
don't. I don't get in bedroom. I don't get involved in fall in love. So as a lawyer, or so my practice is wide ranging. We do
Mm-hmm.
litigation. such as divorce and custody and child support and other
Mm-hmm.
areas too. But we also do mediation. So that's a good point you make. We do mediation, but they're different clients. If you're my client as an attorney, I wouldn't do mediation because it's neutral. Mediation is a neutral process. When I do mediation, they're not my actual clients as an attorney. So it's different things. So in terms of helping my clients reconcile, no. We work on sending them to a third party. So when a
Mm-hmm.
client comes in and say, I think I want to go and reconcile, we call a counselor and you go see the counselor, talk to him and her, and you guys can figure things out. And we recommend that for the children if there are kids involved, and for the parties if they're going through a divorce. But in terms of helping them get back
Mm.
together, no, we don't hold any hands. We don't
Mm-hmm.
do any marriage
Yeah.
counseling ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what's
Gotcha.
the average length of like a divorce case to end?
Before the pandemic, most cases were being resolved in about 9, 10 months.
Okay.
After the pandemic, it's been a little longer in the court because the court has been more backed up. However, it depends on where you are. Um, some states have laws where you can get divorced in a few months. Maryland recently passed some laws that ease the divorce process. So it's very dependent on the kind of the state you're in. It's dependent on the grounds for divorce, and the grounds could be fault or non-fault. It's very dependent on whether you have children involved. It depends on property, how much property and assets you have. So it's dependent upon a myriad of factors.
Okay.
Yeah, I live in the
Takes a
state of
while.
Missouri, so that's the last state I would get divorced in.
Why?
But my dad got a divorce in the state of Missouri, and I felt bad for my half sister because she ate it. She got like she fell through the cracks, unfortunately. But yeah, like that's why like me personally, I don't know about our fellow colleague, but I would that should be the last option is divorce. Like that should be the last option because divorce
No,
is
Paco's right.
very
Divorce should be the last option. The goal is to work things out. Marriage is hard for all kind of reasons. Society puts all kind of constraints on couples.
Yeah.
Divorce, and if there are kids involved, divorce is always the last option. What we see more often than not is when parties divorce, women and children do worse than their male than the husbands or the fathers. Not always, but more often than not, it's different outcomes. Whether because of the kind of jobs men can have, it doesn't. From my research or my experience, the education has been a big issue. Men, whether they have PhDs or whether they have GEDs, men can find labor jobs. They can get jobs working and toiling away to bring
Mm-hmm.
money in. Women don't have the same kind of resources. So more often than not, men do fine after the divorce, and women are the ones who are suffering. Hence, we have child support, we have alimony, which isn't neither one are based on gender, but more often than not, women receive the benefits of both child support and alimony more often than men do.
Okay. And
So what
like what
other
is
practices? I'm sorry, Saeed. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, no, it's fine.
What you're
It's fine,
saying?
Paco. I was just gonna ask, what is usually, other than children, what is the hardest asset to like get an agreement on?
The home, the marital home.
Mm-hmm.
When you are with your wife or your husband and you buy a home together, the goal is to stay there forever.
Mm-hmm.
If you divorce, who's moving out? Husband moving out, wife moving out. Whose name is on the mortgage? So even though
Yeah.
you move out, keep in mind when you buy property, you're not buying property as husband and wife. You buying property as uh, an individual who signs a contract with a lender. The lender don't care about y'all getting divorced. You still owe money in the house, whether you in the house or not. Your
Mm-hmm.
obligation have not gone away because you moved out. So that's the hard part. Who's going to? And when you buy a home, a lot of times you can't qualify for another house because your debt to income ratio make it such that you can't buy anything else while the house is pending. So it's hard
Oh
to figure
wow.
out who's going to stay, who's going to leave, financially where you're going to go, what your resources are. Um, that's the hard part. And keep in mind, when you buy a house, people put 20% down.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk to put down. So you may have put your life savings into the house and then you're moving out and have nothing to show for it. Um,
Is it possible to
yeah.
affect your credit score like after a divorce?
It will. So it affects your credit score when people stop paying for houses. So we see
Mm-hmm.
quite often one person, more often than not, what I see is when husband moves out and he's the breadwinner and he starts paying the mortgage because he's funding his own living situation and he's funding his spouse's situation. He may not be able to cover both. He stopped
Yeah.
paying here. As a result, his credit goes down. And if they both on the loan, but he pays for it, both of that credit goes down. Even though he was the primary provider, hers may go down as well.
Oh wow. Okay. That's. I mean, it's just like it's just like such an unfortunate situation to put yourself in. Like, do people are people aware of all this information before or through
When they get
the
married,
process? Yeah, when they get
this
married,
makes
it's like
me not want to get married, dude.
it's like
Yeah,
like even when
exactly.
they want to get divorced, like, do they know all this?
So I mean, the thing is, we always know, but we don't know, right? When you go through a loan process and you both sign a loan and you're married, you know and you recognize when you sign off on it, you have an obligation to that debt. You're
Hmm.
liable for it jointly, together, and severally, which means individually. So you know
Yeah.
that, but it doesn't always click in your mind that if we separate, I'm still liable for the whole debt, even though I'm not living in the house anymore. Um, by the time you call a divorce lawyer and have a conversation, you will go over all those different eventualities as part of the process for going forward with divorce. As part of the marital estate, and you have to address it. So yeah, before the divorce happens, you know about it, but it's still shocking.
Yeah. Holy shit.
What
I'm
are
That
trying to
the
process it.
go
Yeah.
Paco?
uh, what other practices you conduct, and what is a very challenging practice you conduct?
So we do. We have a general practice. So we do real estate work. We help some companies, either small businesses, buy property or negotiate sales of property. We've done some landlord tenant work for companies who have commercial property. Um, in the lane of the family, we did for a while abuse cases, child abuse cases, when
Hmm.
a parent has been accused of abusing a child, typically physical abuse, spanking, those kind of things.
Oh.
Those were hard for me. I wasn't really a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of having to inquire whether or not a kid had been abused or not. I didn't want to see the pictures. I didn't want to ask the questions. I didn't want to see the video. So we stopped doing it. That was too hard for me. I couldn't. I don't mind arguing about money or property or houses or someone's feelings hurt. It was a different thing to see and talk about kids being abused and kids being mistreated. So that's the hard part, a hard area of law, Paco, that we stopped doing and we don't do it very often anymore.
Okay. Ali, you also had a question, right?
Yeah, that sounds awful to be honest, man. Yeah, I mean, I was wondering what's the biggest reasons people get divorced. Is it just like money arguments over what?
So, from my experience, it's more often than not money.
Mm.
But I'll say it this way: we have cases where people, and it's based on different faith backgrounds, whether people are Christian, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Jewish, whether they are Hindu or Sikh. Culturally, your faith background indicates and dictates how likely you are to get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Some religions, I feel like I'm Christian. My Christian faith is my background. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like Christians get divorced at a much higher rate than other faith backgrounds. But it comes down to the norms in the community, right? So if
Mm.
you're in a much smaller community and is much more homogeneous and is much more intact, it's more pressure to stay married than not. I've had I'll give an example. I had a Muslim divorce, which means both parties were Muslim, um, and it was an issue because culturally, the imam didn't recommend them to get divorced, and it was humiliating for my client. My client was the wife, and she wanted the divorce, and her husband and her had 4 kids. And for them, culturally in the mosque, it was a hard thing for the community to be okay with it. So she stayed longer and went on longer than it would have in other communities because it wouldn't be the same pressure. I've had Jewish couples who gotten divorced, and the same thing. Dealing with the cultural and religious aspect of it was a harder thing, more so than the parties getting together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes those norms and they reinforce family in a different way. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm not commenting on that part,
Mm-hmm.
but it does reinforce. I find that arranged marriages typically are more frequently they don't divorce. And I've had a couple of those that divorce, but more often than not they don't. Um, yeah, and everyone I've had that did divorce, it was very drastic. But I find that Christians are more likely to divorce than other groups. But that's only my experience. I don't have any numbers to substantiate that, and I could be wrong
Mm-hmm.
on that. But that's been my experience in terms of who gets divorced. And I think because um, in this country, Christianity is the larger religious group, and
Right.
the country is very open in terms of divorce. Our laws
Mm-hmm.
for divorce are very open and very liberal. So the result, because you have more people from that one group, I think you have more chance of that group getting divorced and getting separated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
It sounds like your job is really hard and you're dealing with a lot of emotional people. You see that video of the one guy who jumped over the desk to beat up a
oh, the
judge once?
judge.
Yeah, exactly. Once the judge gave the filing. What's your thought
Yeah.
on all that? Um, People get really emotional in these kinds of situations, right? In the courtroom.
Anytime you're in court, I don't care whether you're in court for a divorce, for custody, for a criminal case, for a civil lawsuit, it's emotional.
Mm-hmm.
You have a third party who's not you making decisions about your life that's going to affect you for probably the rest of your life. Family law in particular, it affects you for the rest of your life. It's very hard for people to cede that kind of control and power. Think about it. For either one of you gentlemen here, the idea that you would give a third party who don't know you and don't know your family the idea to make choices about you, your family, and your children. So, say you had a child and a wife, and the third
Mm-hmm.
party would say, "Hey, you should see your kids once every 2 weeks." I don't know that you have the grounds to tell me that. And most
Yeah.
people intellectually, it's hard for them to rationalize that a third party can tell them when and how they take care of their family. And that's the hard part that we know it intellectually, but emotionally and socially, it doesn't go well. It doesn't feel well. So you do see times where people are violent in court against judges. You see
Yeah.
times people are violent against lawyers. People attack their lawyers when they're not happy and are upset. They attack the opposing side. It's very common because our emotions get involved, and we're in a different situation when you're having to follow someone else's rules about something that's so close to you, like your family.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask, speaking about emotion, what about lawyers? Because I've like over time, if you're doing a long case with the same individual, you might develop a certain relationship with your client and you
Mhm.
might get close with them. So, how do lawyers also stay cool, calm, collected, and remove emotions from this situation?
So lawyers are we do get close to our clients, and we know our clients all aspects and every aspect of law. We have cases that can go on for years. So if you have the same client for a year and a half, 2 years, you know them pretty well. And we
Yeah.
typically, because we're lawyers, we know people's whole life. I know my clients' husbands and wives. I know their children. I know their parents. I know the things that no one else in the world knows about them. I know. So people are open with their, like their doctor. They're very open with their counsel. And because we hold so much information, we see people in a different way than most other professionals see them. Sometimes it can be hard to maintain the separation if it's an emotional case. So in cases of like in family law cases where some lawyers start to take on the ideals and the values of their clients in a way that they're looking to be an advocate for their client, but it could be much more personal and much closer. In cases like corporations and companies, you'll see lawyers being much more um, vested in how things operate and how things go? That's a good question. I'm not sure how lawyers can guard against the idea of they've gone too far as counsel with their client. But
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to blur the lines for lawyers, depending on what kind of case you have and what kind of clients you have, because the reality is you see that person a lot. You talk to them a lot. And oftentimes clients want to engage you. They want to invite you to events. They want you to come out. If it's a business client, they want you to come out to their business meetings. They want you to talk to the staff. They want you to be involved in the company as it grows. They want you to advise them in board meetings. They want you to be around much more. So the result, you see more and you feel like you have some kind of closeness to this person. Part of our goal as lawyers is to be zealous in representing our clients. We should be zealous and aggressive in making sure we get the best possible outcomes for our clients. All that does is it gets to a point, it gets to a situation where you're very close to your client in a way that may not be appropriate. Now, most states, there's a prohibition on lawyers and their clients dating. Now, if you're married and you represent your wife in the case, it's too late. You're already
Mm-hmm.
married to the person.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, it's frowned upon for lawyers to date their clients because there's some level of impropriety there, some level of influence you may have over them because you have a position of authority. So, but I don't know many lawyers that do that, or I haven't heard much about that in recent years. I'm sure it happens. Um, but that's we
Mm.
always guard against doing something improper. So we're on the lookout. But the same way for lawyers as it is for people with MBAs or
Right.
CPAs or medical doctors, you try to make sure,
Doctors.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you keep things separate between you and your client.
Yeah, you don't want to be dating your doctor. That sounds like a big mess. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the
Uh,
therapist is like the biggest one.
you don't want to be dating your therapist.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yes, 100%. Yeah.
How much of it is preparation when going to a courtroom, and how much of it is thinking on your feet? Um, yeah, when it
So
comes
I'll say
to.
this: I'm a master at thinking on my feet. I'm great at thinking on my feet. For all the people out there, law students, people want to go to law school. The goal
Mm-hmm,
to being a good lawyer is preparation, preparation, preparation. That's a
mm-hmm,
goal. Being good on your feet is fine. You should know all the facts of the case. You should know all the details. You should know all the exhibits. Preparation is what wins you cases. When I go to
mm-hmm.
court, like I was in court this morning for a case. I was prepared the night before. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours reading things just to get back on. No, I know the whole file because it's my case, but I want to make sure nothing falls through the cracks when I go to court. I know every possible eventuality before it happens. So preparation, preparation. That's a good question, Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation, preparation, preparation. Excuse me.
Gotcha. Preparing is better, but has there ever been moments with you where thinking on your feet is um helps you win a case, and how do you even prepare for that? Is that just not natural talent, or what? Is there something you do to help you think on
So
your
all
feet
the
better?
time, it's happened often where I thought on my feet and it helped win. But when you prepare, good things happen. That's how
Mm-hmm.
things work. When you prepare and you're ready, good things happen. You can be extemporaneous when you know all the facts and all the details. It's easier for you to find a way through when you know all the details. So it's happened many, many times. Let me think of an example of when this happened. I can't think of any examples at the moment, but I
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes do think on my feet. Prime example, we do some cases for personal injury cases. In those cases, we typically don't go to trial for. If we do, they're low value cases. So we go to trial because they're not paying for our client. And typically
Mm-hmm.
for those cases, I don't do my closing arguments before the case starts because oftentimes it's very limited discovery, very limited
Mm,
information from opposing side. So I don't know
I
what their
see.
argument is going to be. So I have some ideas about my arguments, but in terms of their argument, how I'm going to rebut their position, I wait until the trial to see what they're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I build my arguments against them in my closing after I've just seen it. So that's much more extemporaneous, and we do that to good effect. Um, but I would say for all of you out there, you want to be lawyers, don't work on being uh, good at being on your feet and being able to be that dynamic. Work on knowing your case as well as
Mm-hmm.
possible, and the other stuff falls in easily. Once you know the case and you know the law and you know the witnesses and you know the possibilities, everything else kind of falls in place.
Mm-hmm. I think the
Mm.
movies glamorize that a bit. Mm-hmm. Movies make it so that, oh, this guy's on his feet. He said one thing that's so smart. The whole courtroom turn around and listen to the lawyer, and everything
No,
changed. But that's not what
TV
it's
is
like.
TV. Most lawyers, most good lawyers spend hours and hours and hours and hours prepping. And when
Mm-hmm.
you hear closing arguments from a lawyer, they've typically been working on that closing arguments for sometimes days just to
Mm-hmm.
get down and distill ideas and principles into a form that a jury or judge will understand and be persuasive. So one part of our practice that people on the outside don't talk about very often is persuasion.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the goal of a lawyer to be persuasive. We do persuasive arguments. We try and persuade someone of a thing. And that person don't know as much as you know about the case. They don't know your client. You may love your client. They don't know your client, so they don't have the same feeling. You're trying to be persuasive, whether through law and or through facts, to make someone believe something, and that's by
Mm.
preparation. You're only persuasive because you know enough information about what's going on. Even to that point, Ali, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time as lawyers we do persuasion based on our jury pool. So not only the facts of the case, but also the people we're talking to. So if
Mm-hmm.
our jury pool is a pool of professionals with a bunch of degrees, whether they're teachers or CPAs or accountants or engineers, or people with limited, with lesser means, you persuade differently, right? The words you use different, your word choice different, the form of questions are different, how you talk is different. If I have engineers on the jury, I'm gonna be much more technical because I know they think differently. If I have people who are not engineers, maybe a baker on the jury, I'm gonna speak to him or her differently. I'm gonna form my arguments differently. So all that's preparation.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Uh, and what other differences are there from the movies and TV shows to like being a real lawyer? Like, what's the other
Lawyers
misconceptions?
work a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody out there want to go to law school? Law school is great. The law is a great profession. You're gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a 9 to 5 job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. When I first started practicing, I worked for a small firm in Baltimore, and I would go to
Mm-hmm.
work 8:30 in the morning, 9 in the morning. I didn't leave every night till about 11 o'clock at night every day. And this was as an associate. It was a very small firm because it takes you time to learn how to do your job, and once you learn it, it's still more time. Um, in the law, it's different kind of professions. You can go to government services. You can be a prosecutor or public defender, excuse me. You can be uh, city solicitor, or you could be a government attorney. You can also be a private attorney, where you can go to a smaller firm, or you can go to a bigger firm. And depending on where you are, it's different kind of work. Every step along the way is work. It's long hours. People assume lawyers get paid well financially, and they may, but they actually work probably more hours. And their salary is probably much lower than you think it would be based on the number of hours they work. So if you
Mm.
don't want to, if you want a work life balance where you don't want to be at work all the time, and you don't want to have to draft things and write things and spend weekends working, law may not be for you. Law is a very challenging area for a profession just because of the time commitment it takes to mental things are hard, right? Thinking your way through problems is a hard thing.
Right.
Everyone don't have the capacity or the patience to do it, and lawyers do it all day, every day. That's the whole job. It's thinking, writing, and sometimes talking.
Hmm.
Wow.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
It sounds like a big challenge. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this: I feel like I no, yes, I work on Sundays. Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, that's the reality. Some professions are. I tell people all the time. I said it. I've been saying it for years. You can be a plumber, electrician, and do just as well as a lawyer can do. A plumber,
Mm.
electrician, they make good money. The work they do, other people can't do. I can't do electrical work. I'm not gonna try. If my light going out and the house go out, I'm calling somebody. I'm saying, hey, come fix it and give me a bill. I'm gonna pay it, and most people will. So those professions do well financially, and they don't have the same kind of need to be reading and writing until 1 or 2 in the morning on any given night. So it depends on your skill set. If your skill set is much more the kind of person who wants to, and keep in mind, guys, everyone who go to law school don't become lawyers. Some people go to law school and get law degrees and go other areas. They go to politics, they go into business. They use the degree as an educational base, not as what they want to do for their career. I have many friends who started in law and then moved because they didn't like it. They were trying cases and were like, you know what? I want to go to bed at night. I want to actually know my family. I want to actually do more than just read memorandums and so no, I can't do this anymore. So yes, for everybody out there who want and is curious about law, it's a big deal. It's a big time commitment. It's a lot of work. Um, law is rewarding. It's a great profession if you're interested. Very few professions give you the opportunity to be that dynamic where you can help push law for society. You can help
Mm-hmm.
navigate legal ideas and principles in a way that most folks couldn't do. So that's why it's important. In most society, lawyers are the ones that lead society because they know how to write law, understand law, and they know how to build guardrails for society to move upon. But with that said, it's still hard, arduous, and long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, imagine a world without law, or lawyers. That would be awful. To be honest, I couldn't get anything done. Yeah,
That sound
exactly.
like I'll leave it. That sound like the start to a lawyer joke. So I don't. I agree.
No, I mean it.
Life without lawyers would be horrible. I couldn't imagine life without lawyers. I know people out there can say I could, but I could not imagine life without lawyers just because of the vital function lawyers play in society would be hard. Yeah.
No, for sure. And I believe in justice too, so you need it. And you can't have that without the law.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. All comes hand in hand. I mean, I was I live in Los Angeles, so I've definitely seen some chaotic, lawless things here in Los Angeles. And yeah, I don't know, is it better in Baltimore or in St. Louis, Missouri? Where would you say would be the best place to practice law?
To, I don't think that's the best place. The law. So when I talk about the law, I mean globally. I don't even mean the U.S. I mean anywhere around the world, lawyers are
Mm-hmm.
needed to because not only about justice, it's about the framework of society, right? Lawyers help to write the rules and regulations for everything. So in the states, I know. So I'm in Maryland. There's a rule for everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get a deck on your house, it's a rules for how you got to do that. It's a law as to what you got to do, who you got to call. If you want to hire a company to do work, you have to get warranties. It's rules for that. If you want to hire employees, everything we do in society has guardrails, and the guardrails are different rules and regulations and laws. So the result, I couldn't imagine anywhere where you wouldn't need lawyers to maintain. Now, in terms of where is it best to practice, I don't know. I think that's more of a non-practicing question. So you want to be in the sun and fun, you may want to go to California, you may want to go to Florida. If you want to be somewhere
Mm-hmm.
where it's cold and have mountains, you may want to go, I don't know, Oregon. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
be somewhere in mid America, so it's based on, in my mind, your choice was based on your environment, not based on the law itself.
Interesting.
Okay. Would, wouldn't you say maybe New York is like for corporate and then like Chicago for crime? Like maybe something like that?
Not so much. I mean, think about it.
No?
Chicago is huge, and Chicago has huge corporations in Chicago. So, in this country, people may organize in different states. So, just because you're in New York, don't mean you're organized in New York. You may organize in Delaware, which for years has been a common place to organize. Um, I wouldn't. So, we have certain centers around the country that may have more counter lawyers. So, you may have more corporate lawyers in New York City than you would have in Illinois, or than you would have in, I don't know, Wisconsin, just because of
Yeah.
maybe more corporations. But we have currently huge law firms that operate from across the country. So the idea that you had to be in one location to practice doesn't really exist anymore. You can work at a big firm and be in Idaho and represent a client in
Mm-hmm.
New York City. So you still get the same kind of work even though you're so far away.
What do you think about those new Apple goggles that they created? And I have a follow-up question. It's not completely out of the box.
So I've seen apples. I've also seen Oculus.
Mm-hmm.
Oculus
I
Rift?
think Oculus Rift. I think they're trying to, and we're seeing new laws being brought out for them in real time because we're trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong and how things work, and
Yeah.
we're stumbling through it. I like the idea of virtual reality,
Yeah.
um, but as it gets more advanced and much more realistic, we will have to have laws in place to limit and to control and to protect. One thing is we have all kind of laws for what happens on TV, and we have that for children, right? We have laws which you can and can't show on TV, which you can and can't play on radio because we know children observe those things, and some things may be indecent for children or not appropriate for kids. For Oculus, right now, and the other VR headsets, they're not as realistic, right? So you can distinguish between reality and those sets. As they get more and more realistic, we have to have guardrails. And I think you will start seeing guardrails where there's limitation on what you can and can't have on those things because kids can access it. And what you take in helps to manifest things in your life. So if you're taking in harmful things visually, it affects how you see the world. And we have to make sure kids are safe with that kind of stuff. Not only kids,
Yeah.
but people. Some people have limited capacity. Some people have different levels of maturity. We have to make sure that part is taken into consideration.
Yeah, of course. And I think my follow-up question would be would you be interested in like court cases being done through virtual reality instead of just like going to court. Like how efficient that would that be, right? Like no commuting, no you can use the buildings for the courts for something else, turn them into a library or something. I don't know.
Saeed, that's a great question. That's a great question. So since the pandemic, in many jurisdictions, we've done Zoom
Right.
hearings. We've had trials via Zoom.
Yeah,
Criminal trials in
yeah.
some locations, civil trials. I've had many, many cases via Zoom. Um, I don't like Zoom cases. I want to be in person for all
Mhm.
kind of reasons. If I want to witness on the stand, I want to be close to them. I want to be able to see them and tell whether or not they're lying or if they feel uncomfortable. I
You
can
want to
see you
smell him
guys very
sweating.
clearly now. Yeah, I
Mhm.
want to see them get uncomfortable in their chair. I can see you guys very clearly now, but I
Mhm.
can't tell from the video of anything about you guys other than what you have at your appearance. When you're
Mhm.
near someone, I can walk close to you. I can see the change in your posture. I can speak
Mm.
louder or lower
Mm.
and see how it affects you. I can try to rally you. I can't rally you guys. You're not in person. If I was in
Mhm.
front of you, I could rally you. I can't rally you here. So for effect, I like in person court. I think it's preferable for many cases to be in person. But with that said, the way they're doing the VR now, if they can make it realistic, the idea that you can have a whole hearing virtually may be helpful for certain cases where you don't need to have that one-on-one interaction with a witness that way. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
for procedural matters, if it's only you and the judge talking about things and you doing motions, you're not impacting the judge being a person. You make him be virtual, and so we're seeing it virtual now. So I can assume 20 years from now, VR may be an option beyond the virtual Zoom meetings with judges.
It's insane how like
Great
AI is
question.
just revolutionizing it. It's just
Mhm.
all industries are now applying it, and it's making things much more efficient. And I mean, people will definitely be skeptical about it because I mean, who's making the AI? Human beings. But at the same time, it has its pros, and it's making us it's freeing us the time to do other things, just giving us more space, more. It's making us more productive. So yeah, I'm down for it.
So for me, I'm an older soul. I like the idea of so when you have AI and things are at your disposal, it changes your ability to communicate with another person in a much more genuine way, right? So if I met you guys on the train in New York City, or I think Ali, say you're in London. If I'm in London and we meet face to face, it's different conversation and communication between you and I than on a Zoom call. We can easily
Sure.
have interaction here on Zoom. If we
Mhm.
met each other in person, we may not be as uh, we may not be able to talk to each other as easily because the normal social constructions prevent that kind of interaction.
Yeah,
I think every generation has fewer and fewer. The young people aren't able to socialize as well as prior generations. Think about it. I
Mhm.
mean, right now we're on a virtual call and we can see each other from around the world. 100 years ago, that didn't exist.
yeah,
There
Mhm.
was no cell phones. We didn't have like everything you did to meet a person was in person.
Mhm.
The population of people who you could talk to were close to you. Everyone you knew was within a certain mile radius of where you live and near your family. And the idea that you would talk to someone in another country and see their face was
yeah,
make believe. It was make believe. So you were very good at being able to engender yourself on people, and very good at being charismatic and very good at being personable. Now
yeah.
we don't talk about being personable. No one cares about being charismatic anymore. We should be, but we're not. So I think we lose something in technology that we don't get back
Mhm.
when we are relying on tech to communicate and to be more front
Yeah.
facing.
You know what I think the issue is, Hassan, with with this point. I think it has to do with confidence. Because, for example, me and Ali were pretty shy. Like, I'm not 100% sure, Ali, if you can confirm this for yourself. But for example, me in school, I was a very
Mhm.
shy guy. But then with this podcast, we just like threw ourselves out there and started talking to people we don't know. And now I can start a conversation with almost anyone in the outer world. If I feel like it, I can start a conversation. And it just has to do with practice. But like, this is why it upsets me a bit in London, because most people here they're like on guard and they'd rather just stick to themselves. So whenever I come in with high energy and like try to start a conversation with them, they're like, "Why is this guy nice?
Mhm.
Like, what's going on?" But then like I play with it. It's fine, and like they get eventually they go with it. And I really think that people just it just has to come. It comes down to their confidence levels and their self esteem.
But the reality is, we've learned over hundreds of years that there's a reason to be defensive, right? The outside world can be a very, very scary and very, very
Hmm.
violent place. So we're defensive because
Mm.
historically, through our family, we've had experiences, whether to us or someone else, that's been poor or bad experiences based on strangers. Hence, stranger danger is a language they use in the
Mm-hmm.
states.
Yeah.
People who are strangers interacting with you in a way we're looking in person to be critical of what's going on so we know where we are. Online, we don't have the same kind of fear, right? So in person, I can get mugged, I can get robbed, I can get stabbed. On camera, I can hang up. It's no it's no danger. I'm not getting kidnapped. I can get kidnapped in person. So in person, the reason we're much more discerning because we have to be and we've learned to be. And to that point, when young people haven't learned to be discerning in person, when they did go out, they don't have the same skill set. So they have the same skill set from being online in person, and it's a mixed match. You
Yeah.
can't operate the same kind of way. Or even meeting a partner, a romantic partner. You meet someone online, the different communication you would have than you met somebody in person. Having the courage and the tenacity to go to women you don't know and say, "How are you? My name is Hassan Barnes. I think you're
Mm-hmm.
gorgeous. Can I take you on a date?" That may be a hard thing to do in person. Online, it's not that hard. She says, "No, next person." In person, that's a bigger, bigger thing. And learning how to do that is helpful for us to learn how to communicate and learn how to pick up cues, whether or not she's interested or he's interested. You can tell in person differently than you would be able to tell online. So I think you're right, Saeed. I think it's revolutionary. Technology is revolutionary and is moving at such a fast pace we're hardly keeping up to it. But I do fear that we're losing things along the way as we go further and further to being more tech focused. We're losing the humanity side of one-on-one interaction with people that we before took for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. Definitely.
What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence having rights? Um, would you ever defend an AI in court?
You guys give me some good questions, some good interesting questions. So as you guys
He's fixing
as
his
you
seat,
guys
man. He's
know,
right. Let's go.
let's go. AI is revolutionary for all areas of practice. In medicine, we have AI helping to do surgery. In law, we have AI helping. You guys may have heard a couple, maybe a year ago, a few months ago, a lawyer in New York City had Chat GPT or one of his iterations or some other AI program write a brief for it. And it was wrong. The brief was wrong, but he had AI do it. And AI made up cases. It made a bunch of cases to the court saying this information is true and it wasn't true. So the law, exactly, the law is using more and more AI. It's using AI in research. It's using AI in writing. Um, so the AI is getting more and more advanced to the point where it may start to supplant human beings for work, and not only work like building cars, but work like being doctors and lawyers, making arguments to the court and comparing cases. The stuff that we get paid for our thought process. Certain jobs you get paid for your thoughts, not for what you do. So as a lawyer, I get paid for my ability to think. I can encounter a problem or issue and think my way out of it for my client and think my way through it for a client based on all the parameters in front of me. Well, AI can do that probably 10 times better than I can do it and 10 times
Mm-hmm.
faster and with more depth and much more information than I do. So when it comes to brain power, we're at a disadvantage,
Mm-hmm.
supreme disadvantage. AI
Yeah.
can think circles around us without us even knowing. Um, but in terms of representing AI, um, there's an episode, and this is revealing maybe too much about me. Episode of Star Trek, where there was
Mm-hmm.
a AI, a robot. He was on trial for some kind of crime he may have committed, and the issue was whether he was really deserving the same rights as a person who was alive or a creature that was not AI. So the idea was whether or not the way it thinks is a real thought, right? It's programmed to think, and it can have different thoughts based on inputs it takes in. And the analogy was basically people or living things do the same thing. just not as good. Like we take information in and give information out the same way artificial intelligence does. We just do it much more clumsily and much
Hmm.
less efficient.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're trying to compete and try to compare AI to having rights and having the, it's almost like, can you say a will has a right? Right? A will is technology. A will was revolutionary when it was first developed. When people, when cavemen stumbled down and realized if I put something on a wheel down, I can put it between a stick and I can roll a cart. I can move more
Hmm.
weight. That was revolutionary. It carried on their shoulders. So the wheel was a huge invention. But we don't think in terms of putting the wheel on trial for a crime for hitting somebody or
Hmm.
an airplane. Airplanes changed how we saw the world. Before airplanes, people assumed the heavens were in the sky, and when airplanes was able to go up, people were terrified that they were in heaven. But no one thought about having airplanes on trial for things. I think we are conflating our own personal views on AI as if it's us, right? It's easy to personify AI because we make it very similar to how we think and how we see. But I think there has to be separation between our creations and technology versus us and who we are. Because ultimately, we have free will in a way, maybe too much free will, right? If anybody here
Hmm.
has children, you can give your kid all the input you want, and they will still do something that's not quite what you
Hmm.
expected. It may not be
Hmm.
rational. It may not make sense. We may do things. The reason we have laws is because we all know what's right and wrong, and we still know people are going to go beyond that, and we know why they do it, and we put laws in place to keep the guardrails up. But for AI, I don't know that it has guardrails, right? So if you program an AI to do something, if it does something outside the parameters, the idea that it's defective. Whereas a human being does something outside the parameters, they're just being an asshole. It's different. We,
Yes.
we, we expect people to be in different iterations of personality. We don't expect AI
Hmm.
to be.
I
So
see.
right now, I couldn't imagine representing AI anything that got that advanced where it was similar to me or you guys. I would be very, very cautious and possibly afraid.
That's a great argument. Yeah, I
That
see what
is
you're
true.
saying. It's like a tool. Hmm.
Um, that is
I
true.
like my AI. I like my AI dumb. I give a question, give me an answer. The minute it starts being cute, I have questions. Yeah.
um, I think if this is my final question. I just wanted to ask: do you think we are transitioning into an era of where we are focusing more on creators instead of thinkers, especially with the like with AI really coming into place and replacing all of like the thinkers. So it's like doing the thinking for us. Now we create instead.
That's a good point. The way you phrased it, the dichotomy between thinkers as people who may think about things in profession and creators and people who make things. Um, no, I think thinkers are on both sides. I think people who are thinking very hard are on both sides of the
Hmm.
issue. I think they're working very diligently on both sides. I do see the push towards AI, and I see why. And the reality is, it won't stop because AI has done something that before, I guess, first time in human history, AI is making the playing field easier and more equal for people from different backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're in America and you at Harvard or Stanford or Yale and Princeton, you have certain level of access. Well, you can be in Nairobi and have the same access, right? You can be
Hmm.
in Nairobi and take classes at Harvard online,
Hmm.
whereas 2 generations ago that did not exist.
Yeah.
You can learn about economics in the middle in Kenya somewhere or anywhere in the world where before you were relegated to your home and your village. Now you can reach out and touch the world through your cell phone, through your device, and those things are relatively easy to get to the masses in a way that I don't think there's ever been a time in history where people with poor countries and limited resources had as much access and knowledge as they have now. We are making knowledge equal for everyone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How you use it is something different. We're making knowledge equal in a way that we haven't seen before. So I don't, for that very reason, I think that's why the thinkers are pushing more and more because it's equalized things. The mere cell phone, before you get to AI, cell phones equalize things. People can go online
Hmm.
and watch videos anywhere in the world where before that didn't exist. A person who's poor today in almost any country in the world lives better than a person who was middle class 100 years ago. They have more resources and more knowledge about the world than a person from 100 years. They just do. That I can go on for anything I need. I can go on YouTube and do how to do this, and they can show me a video of how to do it, and I can do it in real time. So if I'm a cattle rancher and I want to figure out something out, I can go to YouTube and figure it out in real time. Not hire somebody, just figure it out. That kind of ability to get information at your fingertips anywhere in the world at any time is revolutionary, and that's why I think thinkers are pushing towards it. I don't think there's a real push for people to replace human beings. I think they're impressed with themselves. The idea of they can go further and further and further. I think they like the idea of being much more clever and much more robust in what they can do. So I think their vision is limited on do more, do more, do more, and not so much comparing the the reality as to what happened when you get to a certain point where when things are outdoing us, when you don't need inputs anymore and they can do things for itself.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like we can get YouTube degrees soon. Let's go for that.
I
They
think we
should make
can,
that a
actually.
thing. Yeah, for sure.
Many universities now are doing online degrees and they're doing it via Zoom and or other online apps, and people getting all kind of education all over the world. They have it now at some of the Ivy League schools where you can go in with no cost and do classes online. That's incredible. You're getting a world class education from anywhere in the world on your cell phone. That's incredible.
It
Mhm.
is. It is. Very true.
You have
Ali?
to apply yourself. Yeah, I have one more question, but I was gonna ask Paco. Is there anything you want to ask um, our lawyer today? What do you think, Paco?
Come on, Paco. Come on, Paco.
He says this as he's talking to one.
My goodness. Why?
I can't do it, Paco. I can't do it. I can't do it. Pack your toothbrush. I can't do it. Look, if you facing jail time, just do push ups and get a good toothbrush because you may spend some time away. Welcome back. Welcome back. So as I was saying before, lawyers pick guardrails up through society, and it's all kind of rules, including traffic rules. So we have all kind of rules and regulations to help run organized, civilized society. And when you run afoul of those rules, there may be consequences, and one of the consequences may be going to jail for a little while. But what it does is this is a behavior modification. Once you go to jail, you realize I can't do that again because I don't like being behind bars. So it works to help keep people on the straight and narrow. So thank you for that, Paco.
Sounds good. This is not legal advice. Yeah, exactly. Jeez,
Ali,
man.
thank you for that. Nothing today has been said has been legal advice. I'm not your attorney. You need legal representation on legal services. Seek your own attorney for your own personal, individualized advice. Thank you.
This is Paco's advice. Just Paco's
It's Paco.
advice.
Just one last question before we let you go. Hassan, has there ever been like a specific case or a specific individual that in your career that made you rethink law and justice?
There's been cases, but not in my career. I've seen cases where people have suffered. We see a string of cases in the U.S. where people have been in prison 20, 30 years under false allegations. And you see the cases, and oftentimes there's been cases where there's been no evidence, no proof that a person did anything wrong, and they spent 10, 20, 30 years in jail. And quite often, those people have been Black or African American. As an African American man, I see those cases, and those cases make me rethink how our system works. All the guardrails we have that's supposed to work, and we see time and time again in the past and sometimes in the present that they fail. And for me, that's when I question the process and the system when you see things not working the way they should work and people are getting disparate outcomes or people are some people going to jail for things and some people aren't for the same exact infraction instead of being equal and even is being done in a way that's discriminatory or biased or hurtful to a population. Those are examples of when I see
Mm-hmm.
when I think about things done and I rethink the process and rethink how the laws are written and rethink my part in the system.
Amazing.
Mm.
Is it the laws themselves that are discriminatory, or is it the people practicing, like the judges and
I
the
mean,
lawyers
we've had
in
some
those
laws that've been
cases?
discriminatory. We know in the states
Mm-hmm.
we've had for years, and they started changing laws where certain drugs were punished based on who used them, whether it's crack
Mm-hmm.
cocaine, which are done by people who are poor and less
Mm-hmm.
means, and typically minority people, versus cocaine, which is done by people who are more affluent. The sentencing at the time for people historically for the cheaper drug or the drug that's for people who have limited means, the time in jail is substantially more than the time for people who have more means. I mean, that's been that's not that new. We've seen that. We've seen the war on drugs affect primarily people in minority communities, whether it's been
Mm-hmm.
Hispanics or African Americans and poor people. Primarily, the people who are poor, not just people who are minorities, but people who are minority and people who are poor. So we've seen those situations happen. We've seen Native Americans where there were laws in place where they were taking their children. So there's in many states there are different rules now for Native American children. So
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things have happened and continue to happen, and it's the law. Like if laws are in place and they, you can have a law in place that's biased, even though on its face it doesn't seem biased, right? So the crack cocaine law versus the cocaine law is biased on its face, not because it said poor people should get more time, but because the actual product itself was only for poor people. If
Mm-hmm.
we know people who are poor use this and people wealthy use this, we're gonna put more time on this, even though on its face it doesn't say it's biased. The actual law itself is biased. Um, but that's us as people, the people who are writing rules and writing legislation for a reason. That's on purpose. Um, yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
Um, Saeed, what do you think about all this?
I think this was a very educational podcast about law and order and how to maintain the balance in society. You know,
Mm-hmm.
keep everyone working together hand in hand, and maybe not get any more speeding tickets. That's an important one.
Thank you so much for
Hassan,
your time. Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for your time. Yes, and please, can you mention to the audience how they can find you and your practice?
Thank you guys. I appreciated the podcast and inviting me on. It was a great conversation. I didn't really know how far we would go, and AI was a bit further than I assumed, but it was pretty good. It's pretty good. Yes. So again, my name is Hassan Barnes. I've had practice in Baltimore, Maryland. We do civil litigation. You can find my website online, www.hbarneslaw.com. Reach out to us if you need support or help. Certainly call us and we can help you. But this session was good. Some of the things we talked about was much beyond what you would normally see in law. If you need help in
Yes.
business matters, we help formation, we help negotiation, we help consultation, we do mediation, and we do family. Any of those areas, give us a call. I'm sure we can give you guys some support.
Thank you so much for that. Guys, this has been another episode of A to the show. You guys know how we end it. Salute to cover the camera and peace.
Whee!
Peace.
And we're out.